Log into gyroscopeme.com, the hottest online radio station in the world. GS Radio all day, all night, worldwide. Powered by Gyroscope Media Group, LLC.
GS Radio, the best internet radio station worldwide. Providing the best in music and talk shows. Go to www.gsradionj.com and check out the best internet station in the world. You're listening to GS Radio, internet radio station powered by GMG, LLC.
In the beginning, there was Jack. And Jack had a groove, and after a while, a deep sleep fell upon him, and he went looking for a new groove. He began looking for a new nation, and it had to be a soulful nation. And he found it, and it was Soulful House Nation. And he saw a building. It was a tall building. It had 10 stories, and he entered the building and got on the elevator and pushed the 10th floor, but it stopped on the 8th floor. And that's where he found his new groove. And he began to jack and jack and jack and jack. And he knew that this was it. It was Soulful House Nation on the 8th floor. Get ready, get ready, get ready.
Nation. Oh, I'm super excited today. I am super excited. Let me tell you something. You're gonna hear why in a moment. And this is like one of those interviews that hits you in the heart. And I'm gonna tell you why in a little bit. But first we're just gonna do as we usually do. We're just gonna play, the #1 song according to Track Source in the Soulful House category. Then I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about some stuff that's going on, what's coming up in the next week or so. And then what we're going to do is we're going to kind of move on and go from there. So, with that being said, Chuck, play a little snippet of the #1 song in Soulful House. And as usual, I always play a snippet because it's the nasty little habit of shutting us down and muting us out. So I just want to play a little snippet, and actually it's a rework of "That's the Way Love Is" from 10 City. So we're gonna play a little clip, but first I always like to acknowledge people some people that contributed to the show. Our vocal drop is from Chuck Roberts, who is in the beginning there was Jack, and he was kind enough to do that for me. And the second thing is King T Finesse and Ariel Shante, who did the theme song. So Chad can just play a little bit of snippet, and we're gonna have one or two things, and then we're gonna bring in our special guest. And she's on the move. I love it. So
I
Chad,
figured something out.
yeah. We're good. Oh, this is exciting. So Chad. Get ready, ladies and gentlemen. DJ Dan back again. So listen, here's a couple little quick updates. Just want to let you know next week, to complete Women's History Month is why we were especially trying to get Sybil, because she's really one of the historical figures in this whole dance music community. And we're having some good conversations. It's going to be super exciting. Then this next thing I want to know, we have Wonder Woman. Down the following week, we have Arnold Zaylen Martin. He's an up and comer, and I like what he's doing. He's putting that work in. He's a guy that's going to blow up. Then, so a couple other people we're going to have next month. They're going to be DJ Biscuit. We also have Terry Hunter coming on, and some others. And I'm not going to tell you everything. I'm just going to give you those little snippets. Now, I just want to play this song. This song from back in the day, and what we're gonna do, we want to just warm up a little bit, just play a little snippet of it, and then we're gonna come on, and then we're gonna have our conversation with the one and only, don't need a last name, doesn't require a last name. You know, I'm talking like Madonna doesn't require a last name, Cher doesn't require a last name, Janet doesn't require, and Sybil's in that same category. So I'm super excited about that. So Chuck, would you play this song? Now, I don't know if you can hear it where you are, but I can't really hear the music. Chuck is kind of cueing me in, but there's a song that you may know. It's called, I don't know, maybe you heard this song, Don't Make Me Over. Maybe you heard it once or twice.
Once or twice.
Okay. Okay.
Don't make me over.
Okay. Maybe you've heard it before.
Now that you know.
Get ready, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. This is super exciting. So folks, let me just give you like a little background / origin story from my standpoint. So I'm born and raised in Patterson, still live in Patterson. I love Patterson, very sticky for me. Patterson has brought to you a lot of talent over the years. Some of the people you may have heard of, some of the people you may not have heard of, but it's certainly a high talent place and a place that you should look for talent. So anyway, what's happened is I used to watch, and I've watched you perform in the past, but you know, I wasn't really doing this whole interview thing. And what happened was, so you know, of course, you know the Cheetah Club.
Yes.
And I heard all your music and stuff like that. I went on bought your music. I was DJing, and that was part of my. It was part of my set. It just went automatically, and that was part of everybody's set back in the day.
Yes.
But again, what's super exciting for me is she's from Patterson. So now I was minding my own business, and I saw that. I said, "Oh shucks, she's gonna be at the Great Falls Festival thing." I said, "Uh-oh, I gotta find her, I gotta connect." So I was searching searching. Then I found out where you were, and I approached you, and you were so nice to me. I said, "Oh." And it was so good when you said you agreed to do an interview. And I was just looking for the right spot. And it's Women's History Month. And ladies and gentlemen, the lady that does not need a last name, Sybil. Hey, Sybil, how are you?
How are you?
Hey, I'm good. I'm good.
I
Well,
had to take my shirt off. I got hot.
okay. Well, you were hot anyway. All right. So let's start off, with the easy stuff. Tell us a little bit about you, background, et cetera, with the easy stuff first. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm born and raised in Paterson, New Jersey, in Barnet Hospital, actually, Barnet Memorial Hospital. Was educated in the city. I graduated from grammar school there, then finished high school at Paterson Catholic. My strong roots and strong ties to that city. A lot of family still there, a lot of friends still there. Two of my very best friends are still there. And it was kind of the place, and my mother graduated from Eastside High School in 1960. So
Now we're talking.
yeah. So when we talk about a city that's near and dear to my heart, Paterson has always been that. I've never ever been one of those people. You know how people get into the industry and they will say they'll choose a city that they think is more prominent and say that's where they're from. I've always been a very, very proud Pattersonian, much like my parents. And so growing up there, music was part of my DNA. And my cousin became an original member of the group In Vogue, Maxine Patterson, Patterson Jr. So there are a lot of us that come out of that area because of the churches. I grew up in St. Luke Baptist Church.
Okay.
And I was baptized there, and
Okay.
still have family and good friends who still attend that church. And so when I think about music and think about the early onset of why I do and why I loved what I loved and the way that I loved it is because my exposure. Patterson, when we were growing up, was very different than the Patterson of today. And so the music that I was privy to it wasn't always just soul R&B classic. We were listening to Latin music. We were listening to theater music from theater because New York, we were such close proximity to New York City. The theater was a big deal, and a lot of that and choirs and gospel, of course, gospel. And I got started in music not because I wanted to, but because I think that's what God said. Look, girl,
Okay.
giving you multiple gifts, and so I'm going to give you a platform to be able to use one of the gifts at this time. And so I think that music and singing were just part of my DNA, but I also think that it was just kind of the backdrop for why the type of music that I did. It stems from being grown up in a very diverse. They don't want to use the word diversity anymore, but we had a very, very diverse community, and so our exposures allowed us to have access to different types of music, and there was nothing wrong with that.
Well, just so you know, on this show, if you want to use the word diverse, you can. If you want to use the word equity, you can. If you want to use inclusion,
yes,
you can.
And I would, because what people don't, what I am, I'm also certified. I'm certified DE&I counselor, coach. And it's something that I'm really adamant about because of the nature of the work that I do, because I've been given different platforms. And so we can talk about that down the road. But when I talk about, I don't like to use DE&I. I like to call it what it is: diversity, equity, and inclusion, because I think that that's something that kind of went without saying years ago. Now all of a sudden, because people are uncomfortable, they want to relegate it to letters. They want to, and I call it what it is. But and I see the practice, how it's impacted the creative arena as well. So it's just different times we're living.
Well, just one moment on that, and we can move on because I got a lot of stuff to ask you. I've had friends on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
And the term DEI has been recharacterized, so to speak.
Absolutely.
But when I ask them directly, are you against diversity? They say no.
Right.
In terms of equity, do you believe everybody should have a fair shot at opportunities? They say yes. And do you think people should be excluded or should people who are qualified be included? They said, of course. So really, what part of this do you really disagree with? But anyway, we can keep it moving. I just want to.
And you know what, and you know what, and the thing is, that's what it's all about, because it doesn't. I too have friends who are on both sides of the aisle. I have family members who are, and I have family members, and so, but and I'm talking from a creative, I don't want us to be stifled and stagnated by what's going on politically. As an artist, I think that we have to be able to still think beyond what we see and still be able to be able to create in environments oftentimes that don't seem welcoming. And so what I'm appreciative of is the fact that I'm hoping that through music, through music and what it looks like, we are able to get back to some levels of civility, because at the end of the day, it's about civility. And I love people for who they are, and I respect people, the fact that we are different, and it's okay. But I think it's how it is delivered and how it is presented when it seems overwhelmingly not in favor of what is humanity, what is the humanitarian and way of doing things. That's what I think bothers most of us. I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. I don't care if you're an independent. I don't care. What I do care about is people. And when I feel as if people are adversely impacted, I don't care what color you are. I don't care if you have yellow with green spots. At the end of the day, at the end of the day, I want us all to be able to live in a world where we can have peace, to be who we are in the spaces that we're given, respectfully.
Fantastic. Now, talk to us about some of your early music influences, personally, and let's say, I'm going to say commercially. When I mean by that, I mean well-known people, as well as people that are not known.
Well, my early influences, it's ironic because my early influences were, we're as children, growing up, we listened to the music our parents listened to, period. Bottom line. So my exposures, of course, were old soul, old R&B, classic soul, and even country when I was down south. Because
okay.
living or going down south, they only had two stations. They were both on AM dial, and one was gospel and the other one was country. So needless to say, when I was with grandmama and them, it was we listened to country music, and we listened to gospel. And being in Jersey, being in Patterson, I grew up listening to the OJs, Harold Melvin, the Blue Note, Marvin Gaye, Gladys Knight, Dionne Warwick, Aretha Franklin. Our classic R&B and soul, where there were words with rhythms and grooves that we could understand. Even early hip hop. I joked because I can still recall old hip hop records because I knew what they were saying. Nowadays, I feel like I could rap just by grunting,
Well, hey, listen, now that makes me ask the question, are we becoming our parents? What I mean by that is, every generation has their music, and I remember my father would say, he said, "Tell me what music, Daddy. Hey, you know what is?" I said, okay. So I just wonder, do we become our parents?
We do. I think what happens, and we can't help it, because if we came up in a household where that's what we were exposed to, we generally gravitated towards. I used to get in trouble. My parents, they would come home and I'd have headphones on and be sitting by the stereo, okay? And they would swear. My mother would say, "You didn't do your homework," and I said, "Yes, I did." But she would think because I was sitting there with headphones on that I hadn't. But it was because of the music that I was able to get through my lessons. It was that rhythm and that groove of whatever it was that I had, had tuned in. I love all kinds of music. My father loved jazz. My mother and father both loved jazz. So I listened to Miles Davis, Thelonious Monk, McCoy Tyner. I listened to my father loved Joe. Oh gosh, Layla Hathaway did Joe Sample. All of that stuff. So growing up, and then I'd have Stevie's Songs in the Key of Life album, the OJ Stanley. It was the house that I grew up in. But then I'd listen to a Barbra Streisand, a Broadway show tune album with my mom because she loved theater. And so when I think about my growing up, yes, I am becoming my parents. Because I want to be able to understand what it is you're saying and or singing. And I think that that has been, with the advent of social media being what it is, how songs are created is different because they make it, they have diluted it. You make it easy to snatch a person's vocals and then go in and do minimal work. You have the musicians are out of work because computers are able to do things and songs are being able to be created by people who don't have a musical background and could care
Right.
less about their, if that's C sharp, E flat, B minor, B major. They don't care. Those types of things they don't care about. And so, yeah, I am. Am I becoming yes, but in a way where I want to, we want to the integrity of the art form of music, of creating music and being able to understand what it is, even if there's no vocals, the instrumentation. Miles didn't have to sing a song. We knew he was speaking to us through his instrument. Where are those? Where is that? So, yeah, things. I am happily becoming my parents and my aunts and my uncles, because I have a desire to hear songs that make sense and that were created from a creative space and not one that was just microwave.
Okay, interesting thinking. Yeah, I mean, I have a friend, and if I said her name, you would know who she is.
Mhm.
And one of her biggest songs, as far as she was concerned, like you could talk about I don't know, they call it C sharp, A minor, whatever it is. She could hear right off the bat the way they produced it, it wasn't right. And
Mhm.
I'm like, listen, I don't know what you're talking about. I see everybody sweating on the dance floor. What are you talking about? So it's
Mhm.
funny how, like, if you're a musician, you can hear differently than, let's say, average Joe or average
Mhm.
Jane. So wow. So let me ask you this question. So I mean, we all heard music coming up. Uh, what made you decide to sing versus just be a listener, dancer? I mean, because I heard the music too, which you mentioned. I heard, but I knew better. I knew singing wasn't for, well, they made that clear to me very early, but that got nothing to do with it. But but what made you say, you know what, I I want to sing? Well, and not just in the bedroom,
Wow.
in the
Didn't
shower.
I didn't want to. Dan, that
Oh,
was not my
wow.
intention. Yeah, I did not
Okay.
want to. I graduated from college and I always sang though. I always loved singing, but I never ever
Mhm.
thought of it. The reason why I didn't major in music is because I didn't want it to be a business because I took a musical notation and theory course. And I
Mhm.
remember thinking, oh, this is not fun. It diminished my love for just the organic kind of approach to singing a song and learning a song and loving music. And so um, the thing is, it found me music and singing very natural for me, very very natural for me. Um, but I was a writer as well, so I
Mhm.
actually my foray into the music industry, I really wanted it to be about the writing. I wanted to be a songwriter and who happened to be able to sing her own demos, but I wanted to
Okay.
be I wanted to be a songwriter, and but singing, I was called to it because someone saw something in me and they thought, no, we want you to sing this song because I demoed a song that all I wanted to do was demo the song and so that they
Mhm.
could get a deal. And needless to say, I ended up, the record label said, we like this now because they brought it to them with just music without
Mhm.
there being any vocals on it. And when they asked me to sing on it and brought it back to the label was like, now we like this, but we also want her. And I was like, oh,
Okay.
so needless, and I'm going to tell you the funny thing is that for the early part of my career, I still worked as a proofreader and an editor for a publishing company because I was
Oh.
like, I'm doing this for real. And
Mhm.
I didn't think, um,
Uh-huh.
but then inevitably 2 years later, I ended up uh, getting an opportunity to travel abroad for a series of shows. They had signed a record to a label called Champion
Mhm.
Records in the UK, and I had almost 3 months of shows throughout England, and so I ended up realizing that maybe I can make a living doing this,
Uh-huh.
doing this.
Feeling. Uh-huh.
And it served me well. You're talking about my first record came out in 1987, Falling in Love,
Mhm. Falling in
first
love,
record.
right? Mm-hmm.
And that was the first record. And subsequently, I had a series of house and dance hits before the big record came, which was "Don't Make Me Over" in
Right.
1990. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I'm a Zanzibar. I was a
Yeah.
Zanzibar. Paradise Garage girl. I was a house girl. That's I honestly loved. And then Cheetah came, in Patterson, and it just allowed us platforms. And I mean, I would do the Peppermint Lounge in East Orange, and there were Club 88. I would do all of those, all of those spots, and I loved it. And so for me, when I think about uh, access, what made us better was because we had platforms. They don't have that today like we had, where you actually had people in an audience to be able to hear and listen to you sing and do so. Singing, I learned how to get better at it, by performing in front of audiences, live audiences.
Right, right, right. Well, what's interesting about it is that, first of all, it wasn't your intent. And it's like, and I know you're spiritual. You mentioned St. Luke's, I know that. I know also Pastor Clayton there. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just nice to hear you talk. And it's like everything you talk about, I know exactly what you're talking about, Xander. I love it. And sometimes I interview guests and I just go, okay, great. But I never have been there. I've never, you understand.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's, I guess, and I know you're spiritually driven also. It seems like it was something to be, something you were destined to do, that was in the Lord's plan for you
Yeah.
to do that. So, well,
Also, Dan, but I'm gonna say this, Dan. I think because of it, I remember, because I battled. I will be, for the sake of honesty and transparency, I battled after I stepped away from the music industry. I battled with going back into it because I
mhm,
was so much involved. I was involved with the church, and I thought that people's perception of who I was as a child of God would be, people, Christians and church folk. I'm gonna say church folk, not Christian. Church folk can have
mhm,
you feeling really guilty about doing something that you've been gifted to do. And so
right,
when I had the opportunity to, after I stepped away from the industry, but I got called to do some work, back on stage again and record. I remember saying something to my pastor at the time, and he said to me, and it freed me. He
hmm
said, everyone that needs to see Christ is not going to be in a church. He said, you're going to be on in places and on stages where people are going to see your light and they're going to see him. And that is how you win souls over. And so for me, I don't go out talking with the Bible, talking about, Psalms 8, 1 through, Acts such and such, Revelation. I don't do that. I
hmm
let your light shine before all men. And so my thing is that when I'm speaking, I want people, all of us as artists, I want us to allow our lights to shine. I don't care what your belief system, because I have a family. I say we're the UN of faiths because I have some who are Muslim, some
hmm
who are Christian, some who are Jewish, and some who are Buddhist, and so on and so forth. And
hmm
my thing is that your relationship is very individual and very personal. And
hmm
so what I want to put out is the fact that if you let your light shine, and it's one that's brings you solace and peace, you don't have to browbeat them with the word from a book, because
right,
your life, it'll be evident. So the music that I make also, for
hmm
me, the music that I desire to do is in line with, there's certain things I'm not going to sing about. There's certain things I'm not going to do, and that has fared me well, you know,
hmm
because I'm not. I left the industry because I saw it changing. I saw that the requirements, for women and what they expected for us to do and to look like and be like were just out of line with who I was, and I just
hmm
thought, I don't have to be here. I'm an educated Black woman, and I can do something else. And so that was just kind of my mindset when I decided to leave and then eventually come back, because I knew that I could and it was time.
hmm Okay. Now, here's my next question. Um, you know, I mean, people consider your music part of the house music community, and
Mhm.
you can always hear it, like it's early in the night because of the pace of it. But
Yes.
when you got into this thing, were you thinking you were entering the house music community? Were you thinking you were just singing? Well, I mean, what were your original thoughts about when you started doing this?
I just wanted to sing. I just was okay with. I thought that what I was doing was R&B, honestly, R&B, soul kind of dancing music. I thought it had a cool vibe. I thought, because falling in love, if you listen to it, if you listen
Right.
to how it sits in the groove, it's a really kind of mid-tempo song.
Mhm.
Then when I did Let
Okay.
Yourself Go, when I wrote Let Yourself Go, very much the same thing. When I wrote My Love's Guaranteed, very much the same thing. So um, I think I fell into the dance and house genre for the very reason that DJs would play my records in the clubs, and
Mhm.
people would
Right.
move, but they would also sing to them. That was the funny thing, is that I think we there had been a lull where you had gone from like the Jocelyn and Lolitas to where there was just instrumentation, and they wanted I
Mhm.
was the resurgence and the revisit of vocalists singing over dance tracks, because there was a break. There was a break for a couple of years, and so here I come, with singing over a track, much like like Jocelyn and
Mhm.
Lolita and Gloria Gaynor, where we were singing over tracks that people were grooving and dancing to the clubs to, but they could also sing along with. And I think that I came out at a time when it was they were ready for it again, to have
Mhm.
singers, lyrical songs being played in the clubs.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, which leads me, I think what you just said is a perfect segue into my next question, which, you've been really here before the door. I'm not saying, at the door, I'm saying before the door, only because you've been in this when they were calling it club music, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
So from your perspective, as someone who was an early, I want to call you pioneer in this dance music thing for
Hmm.
us. I mean, where do you see this thing going? I mean, where do you see, based on where you were, based on what you've seen after? I mean, where's it going? Hmm.
I have no idea where it's going, because
Okay.
it's so fluid. And I'm not saying it's bad, but the thing is that they decided it was club. Bottom line is that music, dance and house to me is club music. Period. That I'm just going to say
Okay.
that, because
Hmm.
it's songs that people dance to, move to, and it did not matter if that was a techno club or if it was a it was a club. It was a club. It was a
Hmm.
place to gather and and celebrate and dance and move and groove to music. Dance and
Hmm.
house, the concept of it becoming dance, and house, made it more. It was more boutique. I'll say that.
Okay.
It was for the small kind of more private parties that happened. House music. It came out of what, a house, that how kind of house environment.
Hmm.
Dance music. To call it dance and house, it's like you were moving to it. So why is dance and house slash house? I get it. Um,
Hmm.
I get why we had to go, like you talk about soulful house. There is a difference,
Hmm.
and I love the distinction, because I think that I was more soulful house,
Hmm.
although, and I think the idea of club made me was more commercial. So to
Hmm.
call it club was more about the commercial aspect of it. But I was a soulful house kid. I loved
Hmm.
that time. So when I did those early records, Falling in Love, Let Yourself Go, those were soulful house records, but they could have been
Right.
R&B. Period. You
Right.
know what I'm saying?
Right.
But the
Right.
thing who embraced them were the DJs who decided that they were house DJs. You know,
Got you.
that
Hmm.
house DJs. And so I really think that it was whoever clamored and rallied around those particular types of songs is how you were categorized and classified. My thing is I
Right.
was fortunate because it was called club music,
Hmm.
and I did well. But I
Hmm.
did well because I had house DJs
Got
who
you.
played, you know, who played my stuff on radio wherever they were playing. Wherever they were
Hmm.
playing, if they were on radio, they'd hear my song on radio, because those are DJs that it's kind of transitioned into the clubs. Because
Hmm.
you were house because you were on radio, but then you went into the club to play it.
Right.
So
Right. Right. Right.
it was more about location than it was the style. So dance and house are more of the style, and the place that you would be able to deliver it was a club. And so you ended up inevitably, I think, being called a club. I'm a club kid, yeah,
Okay.
but the club that I went to generally plays soulful house music,
Mhm.
soulful house
Right.
dance music. Period. Um, yeah. So I think that that's kind of, yeah. I think that I'll just leave it there. I think that that's really honestly, because club. I mean, when you think of club, if you look up the noun, if you look it up by
Hmm.
definition, what that means. But when you talk about soulful house music, there were specific, like Soul to Soul, soulful house, loose end, soulful house. When you think about early Tin City, when you think about Bonjour, when you think about all these early Chanel, okay, when
Mhm.
Adiva, that's soul
Mhm.
stuff. You know what I'm
Uh-huh.
saying? But,
Mhm.
but, but we were club kids because
Mhm.
that's where we found it. That's where we were able to go and to
Right.
perform.
Mhm. Wow. Yeah. You know, something you said a little bit earlier just popped into my head. You mentioned that you were doing stuff, really in the UK, you're doing stuff in other places. So you kind of traveled a little bit, if I'd say so.
A lot,
You know,
a lot,
okay, so it just
a lot.
popped into my head, like, so obviously performing in the United States, but you performed overseas in other countries. What was the same and what was different, say, performing in the US versus performing out of the country?
Let me say what I will say about the U.S. Unfortunately, is a very finicky group. You are hot until you're not. In most
Gotcha.
places, yeah, in most places outside of the United States, what I have found is that if you created music that they loved, they're gonna love you until the end of time.
Okay.
And I still travel. I make most of my uh, appearances
Mhm.
outside of the United States. Um,
Interesting.
I've got a large following in the UK, of course. I do the festivals pretty much every year, all
Mhm.
kinds of festivals.
Mhm.
Um, I do South Africa a couple times a year. If they could have me more, they would.
Mhm.
The Philippines and the Filipino community, because I go to the Philippines a couple times a year, but I also do a lot on the West Coast with Filipino
Mhm.
communities because there are records
Interesting.
that were hits for them. Like I had a record that I did called Make It Easy on Me that they loved
Okay.
when I did a cover of
Mhm.
Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, The Love I Lost. So I have markets where they songs that were hits in markets that never even came here stateside. And I've been able,
Mhm.
my biggest record, people think it's Don't Make Me Over, but it wasn't. Don't Make Me Over was
Mhm.
not my biggest record. It was actually my cover of The Love I Lost, the Harold Melvin
Okay.
and the Blue Notes tune. That was my biggest record because if you talk
Really?
about internationally, now, in the US, of course, Don't Make Me Over, massive. But overall, around if you talk about globally in terms of what I've sold, what I've been able
Mhm.
to do, the record that did that for me was The Love I Lost. Don't Make Me Over,
Interesting.
yeah, Don't Make Me Over started it, but it catapulted into a whole different international thing when The Love I Lost came out in 1993.
Now,
Hmm.
were you a big Dionne Warwick fan? Because you walked on by also, and I mean, what caused that about? And then, now that we're having this conversation, just how did some of these things come about? Uh-huh.
She is Jersey. I grew up listening to
Yes.
Dion. Um, I grew up listening to Dion, and I will tell you this: my mom, she and my mom are the same age, and my mom remembers when she was a young girl, and they had the New Jersey Youth Choir apparently, and she
Okay.
sang in that, and so um, I grew up my mom because of her familiarity with her as a young woman, and then when she signed with Burt Bacharach and Hal David, and they started writing, all these hits for her. It
Mhm.
just I listened to her in my home. I mean, you know, Dion. I remember when I did the record, she did "Don't Make Me Over" in 1960. It was her first hit record,
Mhm.
and so for me in 1989, 1990, it was my first major hit record. And so
Mhm.
I recall, and I recall when I did it, and I saw something where she said. She said that she told me that's not the right key. And I'm sitting thinking, based on the record music that I had, that was the right key. Trust me. I
Okay.
wanted to do a cover and I wanted to pay homage and respect to the originator, but at the same time, we were in different times. And so I had to modify it to fit, what we were doing and what was being listened to and desired. And so, yeah, yeah.
Wow, interesting. Wow. How about this? Let's talk about your name. Like, why do you only need one name? What's up with that?
It's so funny. I never wanted to use my entire name. I was given the name Sybil. Sybil was my mother and father named me Sybil, and
Okay.
it's funny. It means prophetess, which was really funny. But yeah, and so I think, and also the funny thing is that my whole name, my middle name is Alana, and so it means blooming
Hmm.
flower, Hawaiian or something like that. But my mother named me after a nurse who worked at St. Joe's Hospital, who she had
Interesting.
met when she was a young, and she said she had such a beautiful, she was from the island, And mom said she had such a beautiful disposition, and she said she was just kind. People loved her, and she said, and I told her that if I had a daughter, I was going to name her Sybil. So there
Interesting.
you
Wow.
go. Yeah,
Wow.
and so I ended up with the name Sybil. It was easy. I never wanted to use my whole name. I think I probably would have made up a name before I used my whole name. You know,
Okay.
I
All right.
just, I don't know why I think about it, but I thought, and I think the record company thought it was kind of cool too, just to have Sybil, you know. Yeah.
Okay.
My last name, think about it, my last name is Lynch, okay? Sybil Lynch,
Okay.
you know, I'm like, you know,
That's right.
didn't quite have a ring to it, you know what I'm saying? But I'm proud of my lineage, I'm proud of my ancestry, but I'm proud of the fact that I just used Sybil. I thought that that was apropos.
Well, you mentioned Lynch. My wife's maiden name is Lynch. It's
Hmm.
interesting.
Yeah.
So,
Where,
yeah.
where she, are her roots in North Carolina, tied to North Carolina?
No, she's her family's from Mississippi.
Mississippi,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
okay,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah.
That's all right. We
You
might be
never know. You never know.
right. That's right.
Let's talk about the music.
Yeah.
What's your music process for selecting music, singing, and writing music? What are your process? What's your process?
Mm. You know, the funny thing is, it's not even so much a process as it is a feeling. You know, like you
Gotcha.
get, yeah, I would get music and get tracks, and they would like, can you write to this? And some I could, and some I couldn't.
Mhm.
Recently, I'm working with some North African producers, and I absolutely adore them because I really love I've always loved that Afro beat. You know, I've always loved uh, cultural sounding music. So because I think that there's some beauty in listening to different types of music from different parts of the world, and so it's really honestly about it's a feeling. Now, in terms of writing lyrically, it's I can only write what I know and what I
Gotcha.
experience um, or what I get from sharing from other people. That to me is really, really important. Is that being able to convey a message that you can relate to? I can't sing a song that I can't relate to. I'm not going to be talking about. I can't talk about the things I have no idea. You know, I, I I just can't. I have to be connected to the message in order to be able to sing it. But I also have to, when I'm writing, I always it has to be personal to me. It has to flow easily. I have started songs and been like, no, mm-mm. When it's too hard to when it's too hard to create it and or to come up with something, I leave it alone because
Mm,
and as a writer, and I mean I'm a writer outside of just songwriting. I'm a writer, and if it doesn't flow naturally for me, I
mm.
can't do it. I will
Oh,
stop it.
mhm.
Yeah, and so my process is really honestly to embrace the feeling and to see what you get from what is presented to you. Because like I said, some grooves, some I get, and I'm like, oh, I immediately can feel something,
Mhm.
um, and 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 it comes, and the words will come, and the idea and or concept will come to me really easily. Yeah,
Mhm.
and then the other times when you're sitting there thinking like, no, thanks, I'll pass.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So, now, do you have a preference for singing, writing, performing? Do you have a preference?
I love all of them differently.
Okay. Okay.
Um, I love because I love people. I love people. Believe it or not, I'm an introvert extrovert. And someone said you can't be that, and I said, yeah, I am. I
Okay.
love people, and I love engaging with people, and I love audiences.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there's a side of me that has to retreat to get recalibrated and to get
Mm-hmm.
rebalanced.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm dealing with trying to process life for me, I become an introvert. Um,
Okay.
so, and the funny thing is, and it's a real thing because I remember someone said, you can't be that. And then we did an assessment of about 40 people in a room. And
Mm-hmm.
I came out exactly as I said. And he said, no, she's absolutely right. Because, and that I think comes from, I think most creatives, we have to have other outlets.
Mm-hmm.
For example, most of my friends who are artistic, okay, and or
Mm-hmm.
creative, there's something else that they'd like to do. Like, for example, I love to cook.
Oh,
Love
really?
to cook.
Okay.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm really good with interior design. I love so my brain is like that, and I'm wired that way. And so my outlet outside of music is that I like to prepare meals and I like to feed people. I like
Gotcha.
when they say, "Oh, this is perfect." That's we have to have that. And I'm sure as a DJ. there are other things that you do that are creative. Now, this is probably that real, a methodical, analytic side, but there's also that side that taps over into something else that's creative, something
Right.
else, and so, yeah, so for me, it's just like I think all of it. I love the performance because I love the feel and the energy I get from people, and
Gotcha.
they help me. They help me. It's like singing in church. It's like when they say Amen, and they standing up, and you know that they're. That's what it's like for me. And then writing is my refuge, is the place that I can go to place my thoughts, onto paper, and then eventually maybe have them become a song, and or just have them be a journal entry. So they all matter. And then singing is just like that's my release. That's
Gotcha.
that's my release. It's the place that I can go. I'm in the shower, I can release. I can sing.
Mhm.
When I'm in my house up and down the stairs, and when I'm singing and my little doggy's wagging his tail because he hears mama sing. So all of them serve me differently, and
Mm.
they're all integral to why I can do and continue to do what I do.
You mentioned singing in the shower. That's pretty much where I need to be singing. Anyway, I'm just telling you like a TI is. That's all. I know my limitations.
Well, just
And
I know that to be true.
I, I say that with love because there's others. I'm not saying we should be in the same shower, but I just think that they should be. Well, anyway, I don't want to start. I don't want to start. I don't want to. Huh?
But that's the problem with the industry today, though. You've got people who think that they really can sing, with all this newfangled technology that makes adjustment. When I came into the business, if I could not sing that note, guess what? It was it was not an option. And so
Right.
now it's like, so that's why when they go out and hear some of these people live, you're sitting there thinking like that doesn't sound like, because they can't really sing,
Right.
so
Right.
I appreciate the time that I got a deal, and I appreciate my contemporaries during that time. And that's why I love the Layla Hathaways, the Lettices, the Leela James,
Mm.
I love the Joes and the Dave Hollisters, and the ones who can actually sing, I admire and love and respect that. Because you don't get that much, and some you don't get a lot of that. There's some that are really, really good, and I take my hat off to them. But yeah, it's different. The times that we're in terms of music and the industry are just different because they didn't go. I put this. They didn't go through the pledge process.
Well, I'll tell you what. I think the Lord gives you two gifts when it comes to singing. One is that you can sing and everybody recognizes. But I think the better gift is to realize that you can't sing very early in life so you can go on and do something else. you know?
Yeah, yeah. But
So,
be prepared to do something else. The blessing, and I remember when I got my deal, I already had one degree. I already had a degree,
okay.
and I remember the president of the label, Eddie O'Loughlin, he says she's different, and it's because remember when I look at the contract, I'm sitting there thinking after I had a debacle with the first contract that I had, and I ended up being able to get out of that. But he said this. He said she reads this. She reads and understands. I was marking it up red. There was so much ink in red. I said, "This no, that doesn't say that. I needed to say this." And he
Gotcha.
expected that about me. And so I always pushed this. I said, "Have a fallback plan." And I'm thankful that my parents pushed education. And so I've since gotten two other degrees. And so it's funny because I said when they say you're Dr. Sybil Lynch, when they say that, you're like sitting there thinking like, wow, So I'm saying that music was a catalyst for me to be able to see the world and go to places that I never would have gone. But along the way, I realized that it was important to have the ammunition that I needed to fight the good fight if music should step away.
Got you.
Yeah,
Well, that's sage advice. Sage advice. How
yeah.
about this? Name some of the places you've performed. Is there any place on your bucket list?
Oh God, well, I absolutely, let me say this. I fell in love and I still have a major, major love for South Africa, in particular
Okay.
Cape Town.
Oh,
Love that place. And I always said I wanted to go back and teach at the University of Western Cape Town. And
mhm,
so I love Cape Town and I love the UK as a whole because as a country, they have embraced me when the US said they weren't feeling me, when the US
mhm,
when they changed how they did business. And so for me, it was really interesting that we
mhm,
had, yeah, so that was, so there are different times, so the different reasons where I want to go, uh, because I've been to parts of Asia, love, Indonesia, love Japan, love yeah, Philippines, Japan. I want to go to, and I've always wanted to go there, but it was always so far away. And every time it was just like, no, I would say Australia, believe it or
oh,
not.
interesting.
Yeah, Australia, because I've been to Finland. I've been to places people have only dreamt of. Okay,
Uh-huh.
yeah, yeah. So I want to go to Australia and go to New Zealand because I had major major hit records in those countries, and so I'd say between Australia and New Zealand would be on my
Mhm.
bucket list. Yeah. Mm,
Oh, you mentioned Australia and New Zealand. That's on my
mhm,
bucket list to go there. And
mhm,
I almost went there in 2004, 2000, something like that, or
mhm,
2002, but just couldn't get the timing stuff right because I had
mhm,
parties and the timeline is there, is like ahead, and you come back here, it goes back. But I had,
mhm,
I'm DJing because I'm doing proms and stuff like that,
mhm,
and I really couldn't, I really couldn't take a chance that this thing got messed up. It would have been a week different, a week after, then fine, I would have done it. But I still
mhm,
have Australia, New Zealand on my checklist.
mhm.
Actually, I was going to go to Finland years ago, just never made it. And it's funny you mentioned those places.
Wonderful festival, jazz festival there. The North,
Okay.
if I'm the North Sea Festival. So it's funny because I got to see, well, between there and I think it might have been Montreux when I got to see early Maxwell. It was
Okay.
early,
Okay. Okay.
yeah. And it was
All
at the
right.
Montreux Jazz Festival, and I was there actually with Lenny White, the drummer, Lenny White,
Okay.
Tom Brown, and that
Okay.
crew.
All right.
Yeah,
All right. Jamaica funk.
yeah,
Going.
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly, exactly.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm,
How about this?
mhm.
Um, about anyone in terms of a group, artist, or producer, that anybody like that you want to work with? No, no, let me rephrase that. Some of the people you have worked with, and is there anybody on your bucket list? How about that? Uh-huh.
The funny thing is that I'm not one of those people. I've never had been afforded the ability to pick and choose producers because I was on an independent label, and so I've
Okay.
worked with some really cool people, remix DJs who I love. Like Frankie Knuckles was probably one of my
Okay.
favorite people ever, um,
Sure.
and because he loved on me. When he was one of those house DJs who loved up on me and early
Mm-hmm.
on, and so I
Mm-hmm.
always loved working with him. In terms of my design, I don't have any aversion to working with anyone who's up and coming. They don't have to
Mm-hmm.
be famous. If you come to me and I feel as if we can work well together, I'm all for it. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
really have any favorites because I think if I did, I think that it would be like I would have loved to have worked with Quincy Jones. I would have loved to have worked with Barry White. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I would have loved that. In terms of these new producers, you know, um, as long as they understood an old girl, doing who loves old soul and stuff, then I am game. I'm open to,
Mm-hmm.
I love Babyface, absolutely love Babyface. I will tell you that.
Okay.
I think he's a great songwriter. I think he's a great songwriter. And some of these young, um, I like SZA, Coco Jones.
Okay.
I think some of them are really, really. I like Bruno Mars. There's some
Mm-hmm.
that I think are really, really ahead of their time.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna tell you, I'm a big Eric Roberson fan. I love Eric Roberson, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna tell you why I even fell more in love with him. He writes songs on stage, and that's something when I'm with my band I do, and I'd never seen anyone else do that. I'd
Okay.
never seen anyone else do that, and so I really, really appreciate it him. So Eric Roberson is somebody who yeah, Eric Roberson would be somebody I would love to work with, because I think that he gets it. And Questlove from the Roots.
Okay, okay, all right, okay.
Yeah.
And he's on I think Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love the Roots, and I loved their vibe before they were even on that show.
Yeah.
Just really kind of a cool. I think that because they understand that soul, that neo soul stuff, and because the sounds of Philadelphia, they're from Philadelphia, you know,
Right.
and their vibe and stuff was kind of in line. And he's a genius. Needless to say, he's also a genius. So yeah.
hmm So now,
So mhm.
like you've over the years, and you've been in this business for many, many moons, and have your musical choices changed over the years, or have you gone in different directions, same directions, just expanded? I mean, what's been, if so,
I think that
hmm
I'm consistent in what I like, but when I tell you, I absolutely love, like I love to go and hear I love to go and hear a good DJ set, period.
hmm
I still have a club head. I'm still a little club head. I'm still that
That's it.
club kid. And
Uh-huh.
so I'm one of those people who can go to, and I like to be free and I like the freedom of what music offers. So I don't feel as if I've changed in that respect.
hmm
However, what I do, I find myself trying to understand some of the newer artists,
hmm
um, and some I can, and some I can't.
hmm
Where
hmm
I'll put it this way: it was no doubt in my mind when I first heard Jasmine Sullivan sing that she was
Okay.
different and
hmm
that she was amazing.
hmm
And I never understood why someone like her took so long for them to get it.
hmm
And I realized it because she didn't sound like the rest of them.
hmm
She vocal is a powerhouse. She's a vocal powerhouse. Same thing
hmm
with Lettucey. Why
Right,
did it
right.
take so long to hear what I heard right away? It's because
hmm
they weren't cookie cutter. Leela James, the same thing. So um, yeah. So all of that, to me, uh, when I think about who I listen, follow, support, I support artists who are driven, are committed, who who speak their truths in their messaging,
hmm
and recognizing that they don't have to be scantily clad, they don't have to
Right.
be a size be small and or fit in line with what music community says is acceptable. I I see now, it's like I see artists who were once really overweight, and they were talking about they love their bodies, they love this, but then they lose weight, you know.
hmm
Why? Because it cowtailed to the pressure. So did you really
hmm
love it, or were you just was that just to mask who you really
Right.
wanted to be, you know?
Mhm.
And so my thing is this, and I will say this to any of, if, when you are authentically yourself, when you do things from a place of authenticity and transparency,
Mhm.
people that need to hear it, want to hear it, they will hear it. The message will get
Mhm.
out there. It may not come overnight. It
Right.
may not happen overnight, but it will happen because you can't live your life in lies. You can't.
Right.
You
Right.
you cannot continue to make music and be creative in lies. It doesn't
Mhm.
last. There's no sustaining power. There's nothing that can keep you grounded there. And so I choose to live my life and work with people who are okay with the skin that they're in, um,
Mhm.
and working from a place of honesty, in what they're offering up, and we just go from there. And so I don't care if you are on the other side of the world. I don't
Mhm.
care
Gotcha.
if I don't care if you're black, white, green, yellow with green polka dots. I don't care.
Okay.
If you have a heart to create music that you feel as if it would appeal to me,
Mhm.
and I agree, then we're gonna make it happen. We're
Mhm.
gonna make it happen.
You know, let me just go a little deeper into that from my perspective.
Mhm.
So really, in the beginning, everything starts from nothing. Now, as life goes
That's right.
on, I'm just giving you my perspective. As life goes on, there are some things, influences, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And in the beginning, maybe you can start by imitating, modeling, if you want to use that term. But at some point, the real you must come out. What I mean by
Absolutely.
it's either A, it's your interpretation of it. I mean, here's a perfect example. On the Star Spangled Banner, no matter who sings it, the words are the same, but
That's right.
it's how it's sung. And I think a lot of times what happens, and I saw this in what I'm doing. So until I started doing this, there were really nobody who was consistently interviewing people in the house music community, dance community like this side. Now, on the EDM side and on that side of things, which is really a descendant of the original house music, soul house.
Absolutely.
There's a whole big money thing around it, and they sell out stadiums, etc. But nobody kind of was talking to the people. So in the beginning, really nobody was really checking, and there was a point where I had to push through personally and say, you know what? Even if I'm the only one who's going to be listening, me, well, I want to say my sister because she really fooled me like that. But me and Chuck, the producer, even if we were the only two, and he might leave the room. So anyway, we were going with it anyway. And the same thing happened when I started doing this thing called Shazam Free Zone. And Shazam Free Zone, the whole point of that was to introduce new music. And like, I know the hits. I mean, it's pretty clear because, you know, and I have a whole, but I just felt like maybe I should be a voice for people who are brand new stuff or whatever, just play it. And if I thought it was good, I would play it and say it, and people get to decide. But I got to tell you, I mean, with what you're saying is that you really got to push through that part where you're not hearing any noise, where it's all crickets. And it's you, you know, I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
No, you're absolutely right. And I think the thing is sometimes, and you know what, there's some people who are so consumed by being relevant, staying relevant, that they don't realize that sometimes, I think about it, I think about track and field. When they line up at the starting line, they don't just start running from a standing position.
Right.
They step back into they step back in to get a running start. They got to get a running start. They don't just run. They step back into it, and then they take off. When the gun goes, they're out of the gate. That's how sometimes we have to take a step back, and then in order to get further forward. And I think a lot of people don't want to take that step back. They don't want to. They don't want to pause, because pausing is not stopping. Pausing is exactly that. It's a temporary slowdown. You know, before you reevaluate what it is you want to do and keep it moving. So. For me, I think that it's okay, and I think people need to know that it is okay to take a step back, kind of look at the lay of the land, reevaluate, come up with a different game plan if you have to, and or reevaluate the one that you have in place, and how can you make it, modify it, and or make the adjustments for you to be where you think you're supposed to be. Because sometimes we think we're supposed to be at one place at a certain time, but we have to go off, we have to veer off in order to get back on that track. And that is okay. I learned a long time ago, I stopped getting caught up and consumed in how many clicks, how many shares. I don't care about any of that. Because the one thing that I'm very comfortable in the skin that I'm in and the life that I have. Because what I do know is that, and I will say this, I am an intelligent Black woman. I'm an educated Black woman. Who recognized a long time ago that I have multiple gifts, like you talked about, multiple gifts. And I feel as if when you relegate your life to thinking that this is all that you can do, when you've been given, on the other hand, something else that you're good at, but you let it stay dormant because you don't think that that's where you're supposed to be. Sometimes that's exactly where you're supposed to be in order to be propelled further forward, and or to get in line with using the multiple gifts that you have on different platforms, maybe at different times, and or maybe simultaneously. And so and so I think that that's what a lot of young people and people who would have a desire to be in this is the music business. This is not, it's the business of music.
Okay.
How do you sustain that? First off, I taught a lyric and songwriting class and a creative writing class at college level. And I recall saying to one of my students, they were talking, Miss Sybil, I don't understand metaphor and simile. I said, yes, you do. No, I don't get it. So I told them, I said, you hear it every day. No, I don't. Yes, you do. I said, I want you to bring in the music that you listen to. And it was like an epiphany, like a wake-up call. They don't realize. And so the thing is introducing concepts where, number one, you have them tap into what they don't know that they don't know. And they don't know that they actually do more than they think that they know. And so for me, I said, you all can, they said, want to talk songwriting. I said, let me tell you one thing. I said, what are songs? What are songs? I said, you all say, I can write a poem. I said, okay, so what are songs? I said, you got your lyric and you got your music. I said, I said, if you're talking about writing a song where there are lyrics involved, I said, help it make sense. It needs to make sense. And I said, so, but a song, I said, it's just, honestly, it's just words put to music. I said, for an instrumentalist, I said, his words are from the instrument. I said, from the single, if he's a sax player along with everything else. If it's a flute player, whatever. I said, the thing is, so your instrument becomes your lyric. And I said, but if your lyric is one that's going to be sung, then I said, help it make sense. And I said, but you all can do that. And so for me, at the end of the day, I said, I aspire to be able to be intentionally impactful in a way that's not about me. Because as artists, we can be very, very self-absorbed. It's always about us. And it's not. In this life, it's not about me. And so and that's the thing, is like, when you make it, the reason why I admire certain athletes, it's not because that they are a really, really great athlete. It's what they do off the field for humanity that really touches my heart. So, yeah.
Okay. How do you feel about today's music? And is there, you kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier, but how do you feel about today's music in general? We kind of talked, but I'm just asking you directly. How do you feel about today's music? I mean, I know you mentioned some artists earlier.
Well, I feel like there's some bright. I feel like they're bright stars in in music. I do feel as if they're bright stars. It's funny because I'm seeing. It's really interesting that you see so many people of color being successful in a genre that they don't, rhythm and blues, soul music. But a lot of them don't look like us. The ones who are probably that are getting a look see and a hear see kind of speak to who's in charge. Okay. But they're just doing what we've always done, and it's unfortunate that we've not learned how to capitalize on it. And so, what I'm pleased with is when I hear and see they talk about independent. I'm doing this independently and doing well with it. I like to do that, and I think a lot of the I think the hip hop artists got that early on. So now more of the soul and R&B artists are doing the same thing, and so I think I see potential. I see there are highlights to me. Like I said, I mentioned Coco Bone. I like Pens. I hear and see a lot of artists that have the potential to have long life. Long shelf life, and I think it's because they also were writers. A lot of them are songwriters too. Songwriters who sang and were willing to be in the background for a long time. Angie Stone was ahead of her time. Speaking of that, may she rest in my sister, rest in peace. Angie was ahead of her time, and I see some Angie Stones. I do see that. I see that, and I like that. And I see more conscious and more conscientious rap artists. They want to have something to say. I mean, Kendrick is a beast. He's an absolute beast. Kendrick Lamar's a beast. But I remember, it reminded me of when KRS-One and Boogie Down Productions, it was like they came back in the day, they had something to say. And so it's an enemy. And so when you see that, I think that's cool. So I see hope, on the horizon. and we have to be, we are, they are not, we weren't our parents, and they're not going to be us, you know.
Right.
But we have
Oh,
to, yeah, but we have to find the, we have to see the beauty in what they're offering and embrace that and support them when we can.
okay. All right. You just ticked off another, you just hit another button with me. Let me share this with you. Okay. So, okay. So in 2025, compared to 1985, I don't need anybody to give me their blessing to be able to do what I want to do with social media. I can create my own buzz, create my own following, and I really don't have to go. I don't really have to be picked up by a mainstream company to be able to do what I want to do, and it's very, very exciting because one of the things that's allowed is for people who don't necessarily want to imitate the people who I don't mean that negatively, can come up with their own flow. I mean, fine, like you mentioned Kendrick Lamar. I mean, KRS-One. Well, you got to probably stick Nas and Common in there because they
Absolutely.
rappers. So, but the thing is, it's like maybe they couldn't get on a major label, especially in the beginning. On the other hand, you can have a Kendrick Lamar, or even if you look at Justin Bieber didn't start with a major label. The guy Gangnam Style didn't start with a major. These guys made it happen on social media, and then they became so big that they couldn't be ignored.
That's
And
right.
I just want to put that out there. Now, the one part I just want to, and I'm saying, but I'm also asking your opinion. So now, here we are in our late 20s. Anyway, and we always talk about, you kind of hinted on it just now. We always talk about we need to bring younger people in, we need to do this and do that. But are we really willing to listen to them, to what they have to say, and or how they deliver it? Now, let me just go back for a minute, all right? Think about this for a second. Now, they say a lot of times like they have explicit lyrics, and many people object to that, okay? They can't get beyond the words, okay?
Yeah.
But think about this for a minute, all right? You remember the song Under the Boardwalk by Driftwood? Okay. Now, of course, I wasn't there. I know by research, Anyway, young Dan. Anyway, but what was that song about? If you think about it, they just don't come out and split. They were under the boardwalk. What are they doing? Playing chess, watching movies? I don't think so. They were getting it in, right?
Yes.
So you think about it. People objected strongly to Elvis Presley back in the day, but today that's nothing.
That's
So-
right.
So how do we? I mean, what's your sense of? Hey, listen, we say we want younger people in this, but are we willing to listen to their flow, and they bring a crowd with them? Just what are your thoughts on that? If we get moved down.
Let me say, we're going to have to listen. We're going to have to listen to young people. Do we have to? You can agree to disagree, okay,
Right.
with the mechanisms in which they use to get stuff out. But if we don't start listening to them, we're not going to grow. We are not going to grow. Young people, it's going to take young people to move the needle on so many things. Now, what I do like is that I think a lot of these young people are willing to listen to the they, and they're willing to listen. And I think that collaboration, I've seen that work in a classroom environment. Because I'm working in higher education, and so you're talking about college level. So the students are 18 to 70, okay, even and older. So you may have a classroom where you have someone who's a young adult with someone who's a senior citizen, and when I'm looking at the synergy that's created when you pair them up, and it's no different when I think about pairing up a young person with someone who's more seasoned. And having conversations. I think that's where learning and that's where exchanges happen. Because ultimately the thing is that we don't want to be so staid and so stale that we are receptive to things that are different. And I think that embracing what they have to say, it's a reciprocal door though. They have to be willing to, we need to be able to listen and hear at the same time. And it needs to go back and forth. And so I think that that will help. And then also in the messaging, you know what? I think that if they subliminally introduce what they're trying to say, people who are older, who have like all of a sudden have acquired virgin ears, which is funny to me, but no, right. You know, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, you know, I mean, think about when you think about songs like White, okay, White Lines, okay, the song White Lines.
Sure.
So when you think about all of that, I'm sitting there thinking, if you would just stop, take a minute to stop and engage in conversation, have those exchanges, and then say to them, well, is there another way that you could, let's say, is there another way you could say that would be slick, you know, instead of just now saying, you know, what you doing, like literally, you know, I'm smoking a blunt on the stairs in the school, like, you know, you don't want, you know, is there another way that you can say that? Yes. And that's the funny thing. And those are the ways that I challenge my students as writers. I had some who hate to write, but they love sports. So I'd have them rewrite. I'd get an ESPN magazine or Sports Illustrated, and I'd have them rewrite an article. You know, so the thing is that challenge them to rewrite this lyric, rewrite this lyric so that it makes sense to you. So I think there are clever ways that it can be done, but I think we have to listen to one another, because I think ultimately at the end of the day, it's going to be the young people. They said it's going to be the children who lead us.
Right.
We as the elders at this point, you know, or the more seasoned that we're going to have to be mindful that our ways are not the way, you know, just like they didn't understand, they're not so wise that they shouldn't listen, because that's the problem a lot of times. But we have to avail ourselves and make ourselves open enough, or appear to be more open and receptive. That's what I'm thinking more than anything.
All right. Well, we're getting down to the wire here, and want to come in for a soft landing. Just want to add one little comment on something you said earlier. You know, most of us do have multiple skills, but either we discourage ourselves or we listen to other people who say, you can only do this, you can only do that. Now, see, for me, like, here's what I like to do. Let me give you here. So one of the things that I like to do, I love to do the interviews. I'm a DJ first. I love to do that. But I'm also a business person, a businessman. But I like to train. So I've got some training sessions set up where I'm going to work with kids and teenagers and introduce them to entrepreneurship. So I love doing that. I'm a professional networker and I'm a professional presenter. So I'm just putting all that out there in the universe. But the point is, it's just to kind of jump on what you said, that, hey, listen, you have multiple gifts and you really need to use them.
That's right.
Yeah. Well,
Absolutely. No. I agree. And I think the thing, we are sometimes our own worst enemy. We are our own barrier, we create our own stumbling blocks to access to more. And so when you talk about entrepreneurship, I didn't realize I would be an entrepreneur until I had to be. You know, I was self-employed. In the music, I was self-employed for a long time. And but there are so many things that I learned that have been applicable to the work that I do, you know, the state, you know, of North Carolina that I live in, and for programming, for programs that I support. And so I love philanthropy. I'm a philanthropist at heart. I give my time, I give my dollars to things that matter to me. My alma mater is the recipient. You know, there are other organizations that receive my support, special literacy programs. And because it's important, and 50% of something beats 100% of nothing. I told someone one time. I said, you don't have to give millions. I said, because if you can give, I said, that person needs bus passes to get to school. Right. I said, this is what it costs. If you give $60 a year, you know how many bus passes I can buy for a student?
Interesting.
And if enough of you give $60 a year, this is what my thing is, that I think of clever ways in everything. I think of creative ways to
Mm-hmm.
be able to help people to be their best selves on whatever the platform is. I happen to have been fortunate to be on a platform where I was seen by people, thousands and thousands of people all over the globe.
Mm-hmm.
But I was enriched for those experiences because it allowed me to understand the impact and the significance of what
Mm-hmm.
music can do. I've gone to countries where they don't speak English, but they could sing Brazil. That's my other place. I love Brazil. I go to
Okay.
Brazil. Um, I love Brazil, and they can't speak a bit. Some of them a bit English, But when
Mm-hmm.
I tell you, you play. Don't make me over. You play Walk On By. You play Fall in Love. You play
Wow.
some of my album cuts. They could
Mm.
all. They dig in the crate. They're digging in the crates for real. And so what I'm saying is that, and I will share this. I think that it's important to drown out the noise with drown out the noise,
Mm-hmm.
moving yourself with the very things that enrich your life, motivate you, encourage you, and inspire you to tap into the best you that you can be. And that's
Mm-hmm.
not always easy, but
Right.
it's worth it because you're not relinquishing power to somebody else to control, your future or your tomorrow. And that's
Right.
the bottom line.
Mm-hmm. Well, as we come in for a soft landing, any final thoughts or highlights or summary that you want to share? And if people want to follow you, support you, keep up with you, how do they do it?
Well,
Mm-hmm.
I'm Sybil Sings, Sybilsings on IG. I am that on Facebook. I am that on what is the other everything actually because it just
Instagram?
kind of that way. So
Okay.
I Sybil Sings on Facebook. I have Sybil Lynch. I have I have a page which Sybil Sings, and then I have another page that I started just because I started it many years ago. Uh,
No problem.
but you can find me. I've got a new project that I'm through music media, independent,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a song called Cheers, and it's a it's a Afro. It's because Hamadi is from North Africa. He's Moroccan, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and Trarius, and so and we're looking to get that out there. Um, and we're doing some other. I've got a song called Intimate and Counselor. So we're just reworking some stuff that
Mm-hmm.
that that uh, that we think is going to be really kind of cool. I'm working with one of Lauren Hill's, well, one of the people, Jersey. He's a Jersey dude, and
Mm-hmm.
he right. He says that sis, I want to work with you, and
Mm-hmm.
and I'm willing to do that because I want to just see where it can go because he'd be bringing some stuff that I just never really got in, really thought about. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, I did work with Salt and Pepper on the Black's Magic
Okay.
album, so you
Okay.
know, but that was many, many, many years ago. We were label mates, and so uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Next plateau,
So
huh?
when and my final thought would be this: is that I remember, and it's my favorite quote. Dan, this is my favorite quote, and it was by Thoreau, and he said, "If a man does not keep pace with his companions, perhaps it's because he hears the sound of a different drum. Let him
Mm-hmm.
keep pace with the music he hears, however measured or far away." And I'm saying that to say this is that live and let live. Allow people to be who they are in the spaces that they've been given and or granted, and
Mm-hmm.
watch the magnificence of what that becomes. Because when we try to derail them from that of who they are, it messes things up, and we have to be okay with that too. So my rhythm may be, I may be a two-step, and you may be dancing a two-step, but it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with it. And so I'm a live and let live girl, and I believe that that's how we should approach life and approach
Mm-hmm.
the creative landscape, and just be able to be who we are, but do it from a place of transparency and authenticity, and it makes all the difference.
Wow, that's fantastic. That is fantastic. You
Just getting
know,
ready.
listen, I am going to reach out to you in the near future. Like I say,
Please.
I have things that I do that are not just related to the music, and I'd like to just have the conversation with you and
Perfect.
see if there's any synergies there.
Like
Hey,
I said,
ladies,
I am more than music, and people don't. People know I am more than music, and I
Mhm.
love music, but I'm
right.
more than music. I'm also a
Yeah.
coach. I'm an achievement coach, so there you go. Go ahead.
Is that right? Okay. All right. All right. Again, I will reach out to you soon. I have a project that I'm working on now that I think, just love to get your input, and then just to kind of just talk it out on this. On some
That would be
pretty
great.
powerful.
Yeah.
Pretty powerful. And thank you so much, Sybil. All
And
right.
he was on there for a minute, so thank you.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen.
Take care, Dad.
Yes, thank you. God bless.
God bless
Yes.
you. Bye.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. The lady that only needs one name. That's it. That's plenty. And you know who she is worldwide. Ladies and gentlemen, DJ Dan, Sofa House Nation, just finished having a great conversation with Sybil. In addition to the conversation about the music, she dropped so many jewels. She dropped so many jewels. You go back over this and listen to it multiple times, and every time you listen to it, you'll pick up something differently. Thank you so much again. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, DJ Dan, Sofa House Nation, coming to you live from the A floor. I am the unusual suspect. Get ready, get ready, get ready.
If you see me walking down the street and I start to cry each time we meet, walk on by, walk on by. Make believe that you don't see the tears, just let me grieve in private. 'Cause each time I see you, I break down and cry. Walk on by, walk on by, walk on by. I just can't get over losing you, and so if I seem broken and blue, walk on by, walk on by. Foolish pride, that's all that I have left. So let me hide the tears and the sadness you gave me when you said goodbye. Walk on by, walk on by, walk on
Log into gyroscopeme.com, the hottest online radio station in the world. GS Radio all day, all night, worldwide. Powered by Gyroscope Media Group, LLC.
GS Radio, the best internet radio station worldwide. Providing the best in music and talk shows. Go to www.gsradionj.com and check out the best internet station in the world.